Good morning. Let's start our Power of Dreams programming this very beautiful Tuesday, this terrific Tuesday. Let's start and manifest our dreams. Welcome back. Let's start our morning with a wonderful book, Refuse to Go. Here we are going to be on this beautiful journey, understanding why we refuse a particular kind of life. Why is it that we can't multitask and make a lot of our dreams come true? So yesterday we began with a chapter, and here we are going to take the journey forward. It is about how our hearts are always wanting to do something and yet we are unable to do something. And it is how we can use multiple talents, and let's see what they're all about. Ruchi, will you want to read them for us? Yes, please.
10 talents in search of a job description. You should start all of them. You should be an incubator that will use every part of you and every talent you have got. You should get funded as a non-profit. Liam finally laughed out loud and sat back. I knew I had stumbled on something a plate spinner like Liam would love to do. Set up an incubator for a half dozen creative companies and get them all started. You know, you agree with me, I said, and read a letter he had written me the week before. As I I could explore. Today's working world isn't designed for scanners who go off on tangents. It expects specialists to bury themselves in long-term projects, especially in technical fields like mine. I feel like just a cog in the big machine, too far from the result to satisfy me. And there is not much chance of getting creative with technical projects. If you start getting creative, everyone gets unhappy. People like me aren't considered professional. We are seen as clever versions of janitors. But where can you go where you won't be crammed into a limiting job? I have met other people like me. They are some of the most creative people who could really make a difference in the world if they were given a little freedom. He listened thoughtfully while I read the letter. Have you really met other people like you, Liam? Yes, a lot of them. I forgot all about them. A few even said I should give them a call if I had anything interesting in the works. That was a few years ago. He took out a pen and a small pad of paper and started writing. I guess I would better start setting up some Sunday afternoon baseball games and invite them to play. That's how you get to create a project that uses every part of you. You find your people not by networking, just by making it a habit to hang out and get to know the kind of people who interest you the most. If you're someone who hires people for projects, for yourself, or for the place you work, you are in a good position to be a talent scout. If it can take a year or two, but when you are ready, you will have your own version of Jim Clark's backup team. So, if you're someone who too often gets stuck putting out fires and wish you could do something more creative, you might want to consider alternating your high powered plate spinning with some slower, more creative current. and throw away your Ranger mask. Start keeping your eyes open for people who can help you. You don't have to be a technician, and you don't always need brilliant engineers either. Sometimes all you need is to hire an assistant. In a recent scanner workshop, a woman raised her hand and said, "My husband and I both are scanners. We come up with 10 really good ideas a week, but we don't get our bills paid because we can't find them. We create huge messes and never get the small important things done. So we could never develop any of those ideas. If their ideas are any good, it's a waste of their time and talent to go looking for their bills. And it's a big waste of money too. When you're not good at something, like managing your business, you shouldn't hire yourself. And if you're good at ideas, you shouldn't arrange your life so that you can use the ideas. I suggested she find a part time assistant, maybe a virtual who worked entirely on the internet. When a creative person does work that someone else could do, she's wasting her talents and depriving the rest of us who might benefit from those talents. What if you don't have the money for an assistant? You do. If you took another job for an additional day a week and turned every cent over to the assistant, you would still wind up ahead financially because you can make things happen if an assistant takes the details off your hands, and you wouldn't be wearing out your sharp and shiny mind on work you're probably not that good at anyway.
So very simple. When you are so talented, when we have so many dreams, so many ideas, firstly in the company we keep is very, very important. People who inspire us, people, whether they're working for us or they're working for themselves. The idea is to have good company because they can keep inspiring each other. Secondly, most of us are wasting our time, effort, money, energy into something which is mundane, not so important. Like, something which an assistant can do very easily, but that important time we're spending in doing that to save that little precious salary per month. But that salary can easily be given to them if we start working smartly because we'll be able to create so much more. In the long term, if you see, it's a very small little investment. But very few of us understand that what is it to have an executive assistant? What is it to have people who are going to do your little bit? So you can do so much more and you have time, more creative time to think about it. Now let's talk about betting on a plate spinner.
When Lyman and I parted, I knew I had him thinking, but he wasn't sold. I had worked on him the best I could. I told him, as I tell you, to stand up and take responsibility for that unusual brain of his. Use it or lose it. Acknowledge what you need and fight to get it. This is time is all you have. Don't waste your gifts when the world needs them. I gave it everything I had, and then I crossed my fingers and walked away. I got another letter for him a few weeks later. I know I once told you that reading without purpose or a problem to solve was strictly for vacations, but I'm starting to wonder again about that. I think I have been depriving myself of learning and exploring. I will pass them up to solve a problem every time. I'm beginning to see what that's costing me. I sent him an answer right away. If you find a way to help the economies of small Himalayan villages and help physics teachers explain higher dimensions and help kids all over the world with your traveling theaters, it seems to me you would be solving quite a few very important problems and being creative at the same time. I think you would better get your hands on about 20 or 30 three-ring binders just to catch the new ideas that will be showing up. Incidentally, you should look up what's available for your incubator at the Foundation Library. I think it's online. It's never too soon to start preparing. Do you know how to write a grant proposal? He emailed me the next day. Do I know how to write a grant proposal? No, but it looks like I'm going to learn, doesn't it? Oh, I meant to tell you. I have got a baseball game scheduled for this Sunday. I'll send photos. I'm cheering for Liam. I'm cheering for you too. Now let's take a look at the scanners who don't circle around to pick up the same projects but move straight ahead. Some move slowly like a double agent, spending months or years on one interest, and some of the scanners move as fast as plate spinners.
So
They
next
are
chapter we'll talk about sequential scanners, but right now let's take a look at the synopsis. So whoever is plate spinner, what all do we need? First, we have decided about that we must have the Learn, try, teach, leave technique. We must adapt that. We must use that so that we can further on in our life. We've talked about this. We've rediscussed this yesterday. We also talked about the alternating current model, and we could work on this for ourselves because that way it will give us time to do multiple works if we want. Now, careers that we were talking about were non-profit incubators, itinerant troubleshooters, or many, many more, because these people can multitask at the same time in a much more higher capacity than anybody else can. And of course, the toolkit will be the same: scanner, day notebook, portable idea deck, 20 or 30 three-ring binders. For portable idea deck, I did say that we could carry our phones and keep adding ideas in that also. That could also be there. Every day you can't carry your scanner notebook. It's supposed to be added at the end of the day when you're back home. You're supposed to fare out in that. So that's what we talked about. And 20, 30 ring binders, we all know the science. That the idea about them is in a particular chapter, if you want to add more doodles, more diagrams, more ideas, we can do that. In other books, you'll just have a problem in limiting space. So here we are. And now let's talk about what are sequential scanners. It's a very short chapter. Let's understand about them. So
About
yes, let's go.
sequential scanners. And now we get to the other type of scanners, the ones who don't return to their interest over and over again when they're finished. They don't look back. Life is too short to do anything twice. Left to my own devices, I would investigate some new field every few months and let the previous passion go without a thought. If you're someone who can't possibly make a list of everything you are interested in because you often don't know what that might be until you see it, and if you tried anyway, you're convinced that your list would be endless. You are probably a sequential scanner. Sequential types are searching for the next interesting thing, and they will tell you in a moment that they don't want to return to previous interest. I'm ashamed to admit it, said one man. But no matter how great a project is, there comes a time when it looks like an orange with all the juice sucked out, and I'm looking for a new kind of fruit. Sally gets interested in something new every few months. She devotes herself to her garden or learning a new computer program until she's satisfied with her level of accomplishment, and then she moves on. Of course, she won't let her geraniums die after that, but her passion will be for something new every time. In the sequential group, the serial specialist has the slowest duration. He stays with one project for years before moving onto the next. The fastest sequential scanner is the surprising, high speed, indecisive who looks like one creature but is actually another. All scanners love to learn, but some are trying to solve a puzzle that intrigues them. And when they get their answer, they're finished and can't be persuaded to go further. The
Let's
serious
understand. All the scanners, whoever are scanners, firstly, the quality is there, they love to learn. Secondly, they have multiple things to do at the same time. They're like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. There are types of scanners who are just going to move away from one thing that they've aced and they've got their, whatever they're looking for, they've got it out of it, and then they move on and they don't even look back. Now that these are qualities of scanners. Of course, they're not going to be completely neglecting it, but they'll move on very gracefully. Now, the serial scanner or the serial specialist is somewhat like a person who can never be persuaded to go further if he or she has decided, my journey comes over in this particular part. They will never come back on it. Very, very important. Yes, let's continue.
The serial specialist is like that. Others thrill to the challenge of mastering a skill and stay until they conquer their own limitations and achieve their very best. And that's typically a serial master. There are more kinds of sequential scanners than we realize. They are a fascinating and brilliant bunch. If you find yourself among them, you will be in a good company.
So, yes, it's interesting to be with any scanner. But now let's talk about the next chapter, which is again very interesting. And this is something which I think you will probably will, hold your interest. Who are these scanners? These are serial specialists. I seem to have last about 4 or 5 years at something, and then I'm ready for a change. It's very disconcerting to keep starting over. I am worried that I'll never build any stability. But after a certain time, I'm just not interested in my field anymore. So there are many people who keep jumping from one profession to another, to another, to another. Let's see if we are one of those. The questions are you a sales specialist? So now let's see if your answer is yes or no. Does your work record look like it should belong to more than one person because you've changed direction so often? Do you immerse yourself deeply in the project or job for so long it looks to others like a permanent life choice? Do you find that once you get the hang of what you're doing, you're ready to leave and start somewhere else? Do you love exploring the culture inside a corporation, a hospital, a film production house, a Wall Street financial firm? Do you worry that your career changes will leave you without a body of work or a reputation that as an expert in the long run? Did you ever think your problems might be solved if reincarnation were really true? If you answered yes to those questions, you're a serial specialist. So I know of one such person very, very closely. He's a serial specialist, and come what may, this is fitting him exactly as is. So some of you, if you think the answers are yes, let's indulge deep in. If you think the answer is no, then let's go for out of intrigue. Like, what is it all about? Let's read it. Ruchi.
If you answered yes to those questions, you are a serial specialist. On the surface, you don't appear to be a scanner at all because you commit completely to a field without any apparent problem and stay involved for years, exactly like a specialist. But then, often at the top of your game, you quit and start something new. Your family wonders if you are self sabotaging or afraid of success, but being a true scanner, you know that life is too short to do only one thing forever. Serial specialists often excel at whatever field they are in. It never occurs to your co workers or bosses that you're only exploring. What are you looking for? Not the right career, that's for sure. One career will never be enough for you. You are after something more elusive and almost impossible for the people around you to understand.
So if you're one of those people, then welcome to the world of by people who understand you. And furthermore, we'll understand two stories. One will be Harry, one will be Edith's. Let's go with the Harry story.
Harry's story. When Harry won his award at the highest selling real estate salesperson in his company, his family threw a party. From being an out of work graphic artist 4 years earlier, who was always underpaid even when he did work, Harry had become almost wealthy. Selling homes and business real estate came to him easily, and he had done his homework. At the party, Harry's boss toasted the award winner, champagne in hand. Harry studied the business of real estate, the history of the homes and businesses in our entire country, and even wrote his own newspaper column in the local paper. He had the first website in our state of viewing homes and making appointments. No one ever saw anything like him, he said. Harry smiled proudly. I don't know where you are going from here, Harry, but I hope you don't go after my job. The boss laughed. Harry laughed too. Don't worry, Joe. I'm leaving real estate entirely. The room fell silent. His family was stunned. What are you talking about, Harry? They shouted. I wanted to be an English teacher in a high school, and I want to write a book about it. Everyone was dumbfounded, even embarrassed. But to Harry, it made perfect sense. Why would I want to keep doing the same thing over and over? He said. For the money, his brother shouted out, and the room broke into relieved laughter. When things got quiet again, Harry, still smiling, said, I have enough money, more than I need. Now I want to try something different. That was 3 years before I first got to know Harry at a teachers' conference where I was speaking. Harry not only taught high school, but had written a very decent account of it in a book length manuscript. He's not sure he wants to publish it because he says it was a learning experience that he wants to have again, but do even better the next time. But he won't be teaching school this time. He will be traveling to an obscure island near the southern tip of South America and writing about the remnants of a small tribe of people who lived there. To Harry, it was simple. You don't spend your life making money you don't need, and you don't waste time doing things you already know how to do. Harry is a typical scanner. He loves life and he loves to learn since he was very young. He had the ability to bury himself in a subject for weeks, even years. He was obviously very smart, but more than that, he had a wide range of talents. He loved nature and math. He enjoyed taking things apart and putting them back together and designing new gimmicks for daily use. He could find his way around places he had never been when everyone else was lost. And he was kind and sensitive to people. His students loved him. It seemed there was nothing Harry couldn't do. But the only thing that had stayed consistent throughout his life was searching for and finding an area that was almost completely foreign to him and stepping into it like an actor in a new role. What was his nectar, his reward? He knew the answer right away. It's simple. I want to live more than one life. I want to know what it's really like to be many different people, he explained. I wanted the experience of being a rich, successful kid in real estate, and I got it. I loved that. Then I was ready for the next thing.
So, it's very nice that this book is written so that, you understand yourself why you are built the way you are. Like people asked me, you had a flourishing business of your graphic designing, your invitation card. How did you leave it? How did you let go? It is very clear. 2.5 decades I'd worked, 20 years I'd worked in the business. It stopped giving me the satisfaction. It stopped giving me that interest. It stopped spiking my energy. So I moved on. Then I moved on to Lady Circle. Then I moved on to, my alcohol industry. And I'm going to move on again because that's things stop solving a purpose. I don't want to be stuck in the life which is mundane, which is boring. So it's that simple. If you're a scanner and if you like to do something new, live for yourself, not for the world. People can say, oh, you're doing so well. Why do you have to move? You move if you want to. If it doesn't solve a purpose, move. And with this beautiful book, at least you're realizing that it's not unnatural that thousands and thousands of people in the world, I would say millions of people in the world who are doing that all the time, except that we probably don't know them. Now let's do another small story to understand, which is Edith's.
Edith Small Business Rescues. I met Edith on a telephone session last year. After we said our hellos, she asked a question that made me laugh. So, where do I sign up for reincarnation? Because that's the only way I will ever solve my problem, Edith said. You sound a lot like a scanner, I replied. But she didn't think so. What do you call it when you stick with everything for about 5 years and then get tired of it? That doesn't sound like a scanner to me. I have done it 3 times already. I don't know what's the matter with me. I was intrigued and asked her to tell the whole story. I was so excited about buying my first business, a fabric and sewing store, but once I moved in, the true condition of the business was revealed. It was an awful mess, unbelievable. We owed money and had money owed us, and both were overdue for almost a full year. I learned how to run a business under fire. I almost went bust every month. My husband said I should name the store The Perils of Pollen because I always looked like I was tied to the tracks looking at an oncoming train. It's true. I worked night and day to survive, and finally, after a few years, I did it. It was wonderful. I spent another year fine tuning every aspect of the business and got things humming like a swing machine. It was beautiful, beautiful to look at, beautiful to work in. I couldn't believe how smoothly things ran. I had loads of customers. I gave loads of swing classes. The bookkeeping setup was perfect, and the bills were paid. I could finally sit in the store and look around with a big smile on my face. But after a few months of smiling, I realized I was bored. I started out not wanting to go to work. I got maudlin, thinking my life was over. My family thought I was crazy, so did I. Maybe the part you loved was over, I suggested. She, she sounded interested. Well, taking care of those emergencies wasn't very restful, but it was always exciting and it made me feel that I was doing something worthwhile. But listen, you can't just throw things out when they are finally working. I sold the place because we moved to another part of the country and then bought this very distressed little appliance store and started all over again. And when that store was in shape, instead of enjoying the fruits of my labors and relaxing a little, I wanted to sell again. I wonder if I really am one of those people who are afraid of success. Sounds like It's boredom you're afraid of, I suggested. You work very hard to create success. Oh, can you be afraid of boredom? You sure can, I laughed. It's like kryptonite to scanners. It makes them think their lives are over like you did. Well, I'll be damned, she said, struck by this piece of information. So, what do you do? How do you deal with boredom? You do everything in your power to avoid it, I said. You did exactly the right thing. Well, blow me down, she said. Why do scanners turn their backs on success? Do they fear it? Are they afraid of commitment? Or is it something simpler than that?
It's actually something very simple, which we'll read tomorrow. Scanners just want to be intrigued. Scanners just want to have fun. Scanners just want to have the excitement. They don't want to have boredom, monotony, mundane stuff. And that's what tomorrow's journey will be all about. So without further ado, let's do our sun salutations and then we'll move on to letting go. Thank you, Ruchi, for reading so beautifully for all of us and making our morning so precious. So very important in our life to keep learning and to keep growing. And now that we have this scanner book, at least we don't judge ourselves and why am I like this? There's so many more people like us, if we are scanners, who keep moving on. And yet there are people who stay in the same business for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, who are not trying something new. And there are some who keep trying new businesses and keep growing them and shutting down the old ones that don't make sense to them. So everyone is fine, except that you should realize that in life, you will only grow when you're doing something very, very interesting and it interests you, it motivates you. If it's boredom, you'll be stagnant. And our journey is supposed to go on and on and on. Rahul sir, let's start sun salutations.
The Surya Namaskar with mantras. Om Mitraye Namaha. Om Ravaye Namaha. Om Suryaye Namaha. Om Bhanave Namaha. Om Khagaye Namaha. Om Pushne Namaha. Om Hiranyagarbhaye Namaha. Om Marichaye Namaha. Om Adityay Namaha. Om Savitre Namaha. Om Arkay Namaha. Om Bhaskaray Namaha. Salutations to the universal friend. Salutations to the resplendent sun. Salutations to the energy that induces activity within us. Salutations to the one who illumines. Salutations to the sun moving across the sky. Salutations to the giver of strength. Salutations to the golden cosmic self. Salutations to the Lord of the dawn. Salutations to the son of Aditi, the cosmic mother. Salutations to the benevolent mother. Salutations to the energy that we praise and to the one who guides us to salvation. The sun salutation now with the names of the postures both in Sanskrit and English. Pranamasan, Hastuthanasan, Padahastasana, left leg back, Ashvasanchalanasana, Parvatasana, and hold this position and now slowly progressing into the deeper version of Parvatasana, Adho Mukh Svanasana. Ashtang Namaskar, Bhujangasana, Parvatasana, left forward Ashvasanchalanasana, Padahastasana, Hastuthanasan, Pranamasan. On the right side, prayer position, raised arms pose, hand to feet pose, right leg back, equestrian pose, mountain pose, hold mountain pose, and slowly moving into the deeper version of mountain, the downward facing dog. Salute with 8 limbs. Cobra. Press back to mountain. Right forward, equestrian pose. Hand to feet pose. Raised arms position. Prayer pose. One round of the sun salutation with awareness on the breathing. So exhaling our hands to the chest, pranam. Inhaling as we bend back. We exhale as we fold forward. Left leg back, inhale as we're arching back. Exhale into the forward. Hold the breath for knees, chest, chin. Inhale as we arch back. Exhale into the forward. Left leg forward, inhale. This is a back bend. Exhale whenever we bend forward. Inhale as we bend back. Exhale, hands to the chest. And on the right, deep breathing. Exhale. A deep inhale. A long exhale. Right leg back with an inhale. And exhale. Hold the breath. Inhale. And exhale. Right leg forward with a deep inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale.
Welcome back. Today I'm going to start a beautiful chapter. It may take us time, but I would like to complete the chapter and may take the session a little longer. It's about the most important thing in our life, which is called fear. From the time we became human beings, we have been using this fear. Pele, we used to hunt for our food with animals, and we were scared that whether a leopard will attack us, a lion will attack us. We were born with fear. Our senses were born with fear. And now that we know we are no longer early man and there will be no leopards and tigers and lions around us, yet we have fear. Our brain is wired to save us, to safeguard us, to give us reflections, as to give us, to actually protect us all the time. And that is why fear comes up. Whenever something extra out of your comfort zone is going to come, there will be this fear. This fear is very toxic, but it's also part of our life. So let me start this chapter. When required, I'm going to ask people to read it. So chapter number 6, fear, is one of the most important things that all of us should try to understand. The many faces of fear are familiar to us all. We all feel free, floating anxiety and panic. We all have felt it and we feel it. We have been paralyzed and frozen by fear when it's accompanying palpitations and apprehensions. Worries are chronic fears. Paranoia is in its extremes. In milder forms of fear, we are merely uneasy. When it is more severe, we become scared, cautious, blocked, tense, shy, speechless, superstitious, defensive, distrustful, threatened, insecure, dreading, suspicious, timid, trapped, guilty, and full of stage fright. So the best part is, if you have ever seen yourself going for some movie which is adrenaline rushing, maybe some kind of a horror movie, how you start sweating, how your palpitations start going more, because the mind cannot differentiate what is real and what is fiction. All it sees is your palpitations, and there'll be a sense of fear. There is fear of pain and suffering, fear of living, fear of loving, fear of closeness, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of God, fear of hell, fear of damnation, fear of poverty, fear of ridicule and criticism, fear of being trapped, fear of inadequacy, fear of danger, fear of disapproval, fear of boredom, fear of responsibility, fear of making a decision, fear of authority, fear of punishment, fear of change, fear of loss of security, fear of violence, fear of losing control, fear of feelings themselves, fear of manipulation, fear of being found out, fear of heights, fear of sex, fear of being on their own and being responsible, and fear of fear itself. Please understand, fear is the most important thing that we are all feeling all around us. फैमिली में कोई चला गया, डर है. अगर बच्चे बड़े हो गए, बिजनेस टेक ओवर कर लिया, हमारी कौन पूछेगा, कंट्रोल फ्रीक की प्रॉब्लम, हमारी को सुनेगा नहीं, फियर, फियर फियर फियर। अच्छा, अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं आए, फैमिली ने क्या बोलेगा, फियर। वी आर गवर्न्ड बाय दिस फियर ऑल अराउंड अस every single day, whether we realize or whether we don't realize. There is, moreover, a cause of fear of which many people are unaware: the fear of retaliation. The fear arises from the desire to strike out, to hit back, to attack. As we let go of fear, we find that behind it, there is often anger at the subject of fear itself. The willingness to let go of the fear and overcome it already moves up to the next level, which is anger. The fact that we can face this combination of fear, anger, and feelings and surrender, it moves us instantly up to pride and courage. Now let's know we are moving up gradually, one step. Fear के ऊपर क्या है, anger. Anger के ऊपर क्या है, pride. उसके ऊपर क्या है, courage. Now courage is a bottom, is the tipping point, is a medium sector where you move up. Now let's understand the kind of fears we have. Have you seen people stuttering in front of a stage? I have done that. I was in class 5, 10 years old, and I was told to read the news in my school. And all of a sudden I was told, and I had practiced so much. I was told today that tomorrow you're going to be reading. Today I had practiced back home. I don't know how many times. And in the morning, I made a complete jackass out of myself. I could not read the news, not even like a paragraph. I was so fearful that I still remember I was stuttering. Why? What will people say? And that fear grips you so much that you're unable to perform to your best of ability. You have butterflies is actually good. If you have butterflies in the stomach, it's kind of a nice fear because good ho raha hai, and I'm a little tickled and I know I can do it, but yeah. But I actually had fear. I could speak. One excellent experiment is to let go of the fear of fear itself. Now, it's very easy to say, but let's understand the entire thing. When we stop being afraid of fear, we notice that it's just a feeling. In fact, fear is far more tolerable than depression. Surprisingly, to a person who has been in bad depression, the re emergence of fear is welcomed. It is better to feel scared than hopeless. To understand how fear is self reinforcing, we have to stop and look at another one of the laws of consciousness. Which is the law of consciousness? What one holds in mind tends to manifest. अगर दिमाग में कुछ चल रहा है, वो manifest होने की बहुत chances हैं. What this means is that any thought which we consistently hold in our mind and consistently give energy to will tend to come into our life according to the very form in which our mind has held it. Thus, fear engenders fearful thoughts. The more we hold these thoughts in mind, the more likely the feared event will happen in our life, which again reinforces our fear. So I don't know if anybody is overweight here, you'll understand this. Suppose if you were to talk about your weight all the time and directly weight बढ़ जाएगा, weight बढ़ जाएगा. Please look at your history. You have only increased weight. You have never decreased weight. Even if you have decreased weight, you have re-put on that weight because you have a fear of gaining weight. Fear will always manifest. So as a medical intern, there was a fear of public speaking. And the very thought of getting up in front of medical colleagues to present a patient's case, the voice would fail out of sheer fright. Because of holding that fear, the inevitable situation arose that necessitated having to present the case of a patient to the staff meeting. After reading a few paragraphs of the case history, the voice began to falter and get weaker and eventually stopped. The very fear that had been held in the mind came to pass. And of course, that occurrence reinforced a fear of public speaking and brought an apathy about it. Henceforth, for many, many years, the limiting belief operated: I can't speak in public. I'm just not a public speaker. And any and all speaking occasions were avoided, with the consequent loss of self-esteem, avoidance of activities, and limitation of vocational goals. Let me tell you something. All the fears have a history behind it. And that history is a conditioning of your mind, which makes you believe something about yourself. And that belief triggers off fear. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, humko to dar lagta hai. I can't go in the lift. I can't go to heights. Oh, I have this. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't. As the fear years passed, the fear took a somewhat different form. The belief system was, I don't want to be a speaker. I don't want to speak because I might be boring and maybe a bad speaker. Now, finally, an occasion arose where it was necessary to speak in a public meeting. There was opportunity to sit down and find the courage to face the fear. The inner dialogue was, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? Well, you could be terribly boring. And that this brought to mind all the boring speeches given by others. Then it became possible to accept that a boring speech was actually common and certainly not the end of the world. There was a letting go of the pride and vanity behind that fear. Yes, it just might happen that the speech would be terribly boring. The fateful day finally arrived. The paper was written out, or to all that was needed was to read it. Yes, it would have been far more interesting to give it extemporaneously, but that was an acknowledgement and an acceptance of the fear. And so the speech was written out beforehand. The moment arrived to ascend the podium. Despite the inner fear and reading the speech in a flat, monotone voice, the feat was accomplished. So very, very important to अगर कोई बोले extempore में अपना speech बोल दो and आप prepared में आपको वैसे ही fear है, what will happen? But at least you haven't dwelled over it, right? Now what happens? There was technically a good paper, but boy, it sure was boring. He was told. The inner self, however, didn't care. It was jubilant that there had been the courage and the acceptance to face the situation to actually do it. The fact that it was boring was irrelevant. What was important was that it was done at all. Self-esteem increased because the fear and inhibition had been overcome, and speaking engagements no longer had to be avoided. In fact, the practice developed to begin all presentations with a warning to the audience. I am one of the most boring speakers around, and in fact, I can be quite tedious. Surprisingly, this brought a laugh from the audience. Their laughter signified acceptance of our common humanness, and the fears were lifted. It was discovered that humor is valuable in public speaking. It is a way of just being at one with the humanness of the audience and discovering their compassion. Once we are united with them in compassion, we can feel their encouragement as they cheer us on. We love them for relieving our fear and accepting us, and they love us back for doing the very thing that they fear themselves. Once its evolution through the levels of emotions made, there's an enjoyment of public speaking. We find out that part of the mind can be quite funny when the occasion arises. Eventually, with complete surrender, reading a prepared speech dropped off and the speaking became extemporaneous. With more experience, the public speaking improved, which engendered more public engagements. This allows the accomplishment of many vocational goals and heretofore had been thwarted. There were appearances in the national media, such as talk shows on television. It's a long step from being too frightened even to read a case history in front of a few interns to enjoying oneself speaking on the television network to millions of viewers on the Barbara Walters show. We all derive great benefit from liberating ourselves out of a fearful inhibition into successful functioning, because that learning process automatically spills over into many other areas of our life. We become more capable, freer, and happier, and with that, there's an inner peace of mind. Now, we've just gone through one example. How did this fear get over? Just because किसी ने बोला extempo आज speech कर दो, उसको पता ही नहीं था, तो उसने सोचा ही नहीं. जब हम too much सोचते हैं ना, तो fear आता है. So इसलिए बहुत ज़्यादा सोचने की जरूरत नहीं है. We should try and avoid thinking too much, because procrastination, thinking too much, actually kind of is detrimental for our growth. Now let's talk about the healing effect of love. Fear is so pandemic in a society that it constitutes the predominant ruling emotion of our world, as we know it. Fear was also the predominant emotion amongst the thousands of patients treated during the decades of clinical practice. Fear is so extensive and takes so many forms that there are not enough pages in this book to enumerate all of its varieties. Fear is associated with our survival, and so it is given a special accord in our minds. For most people, fear is so pervasive that their life really constitutes one giant set of compensatory devices to conquer their fears. However, even this does not suffice, so that the media present us over and over again with fearful situations, as in the morning news. Terrorist group threatens to poison our food supply. Such headlines are constant, as though to give the mind further opportunities to master the most dreaded of all emotions. As the lyrics of the song put it, we are caught between a fear of living and a fear of dying. So, how does the newspaper media talk to us? Sansani cover, this happened. You pick up the headlines. I'm very grateful to the pandemic. We stopped buying the newspaper, the printed newspaper for 2 years now. What do you read in the front page? Everything is coming out of fear. Your fear is getting strengthened more and more and more. These days, in news media is talking about Omicron in such a way, it's just bringing back in fear. People are scared what will happen. Fear, fear, fear. When all the mind's compensatory devices fail and fear spills forth into consciousness as overt anxiety, attacks, or phobias, the person is labeled as having an anxiety neurosis. It is informative to note that the tranquilizer Valium is the biggest selling drug in America. Fears tend to escalate. Thus, the typical patient with phobia shows a progressive extension of the fear into more and more avenues of life, leading to further and further restrictions of activity, and in severe cases, a total immobilization. This was a case of a patient named Betty. Before we go into the case of Betty, people have fear of not sleeping and they pop up medicines to sleep. Very well, the science has known that if you pop up a sleeping pill, you'll only increase your sleep spanning from more than just 30 minutes more. Yet people say, oh, we have fear. People think they can't, even if they meditate or even if they breathe, they can't sleep. But because that's a conditioning in their mind. To break the conditioning is not easy. It takes layers and layers and layers, and the therapist working on you for them to get out of you. But let's understand Betty's case to go further into the world of fear. Betty was 34 years old and she looked much older because she was thin and drawn. She entered the office carrying armloads of paper bags, which were later found to contain 56 different bottles of health store preparations, vitamins, nutritional supplements, plus several bags of special food. Her fear has started out as a germ phobia, and soon everything around her seemed to be possibly contaminated with germs. She had many health fears of contracting contagious diseases, which she had progressed now to a fear of cancer. She believed every scare story she read, so she was afraid of nearly every food, the air she breathed, and getting sunshine on her skin. She wore white clothes because she was afraid of dyes in the material. In the office, she would never sit down because she was afraid the chair might be contaminated. Whenever she needed a prescription, she asked that it be written in the middle of the prescription pad, which had not been touched. Furthermore, she wanted to tear the page from the pad itself. She didn't want me to touch it because possibly I had gotten germs from shaking hands with the last patient. She wore white gloves at all times. She requested to be treated by telephone as she was too afraid of making the trip to the office again. The following week on the telephone, she said that she was afraid to get up. She would call from home while she was still in bed because now she was afraid to go out on the streets. She had developed a fear of muggers, rapists, air pollution. At the same time, she was afraid to stay home in bed for fear that she might get worse. And to compound all her fears, she was afraid that she was losing her mind. She was afraid that the medication couldn't help her and that it might have side effects. And she was afraid not to take it out for fear. And she would soon get better. She would not get better. Now she said that she had a fear that she might choke on the pills and stop taking even the health pills, much less the prescribed medication. Her fears were so paralyzing that even therapeutic maneuver was totally stymied. She wouldn't allow me to talk to her family. She was afraid that they would find out that she was seeing a psychiatrist and think she was crazy. I was totally baffled and racked my brain for weeks on how I could possibly help her. Finally, I let her go. I experienced a relief of surrender in that I just totally gave up. There's absolutely nothing I can do to help her. The only thing left to do is just to love her. And so that's what I did. I just thought of her lovingly, and frequently I sent her loving thoughts. I gave her as much love as I could possibly give when we talked on the telephone. And finally, after a couple of months of loving therapy, she got sufficiently better to come to the office. As time went by, she improved through her fears and inhibitions began to diminish. Though she never did develop any insight, she was too afraid of talking about psychological matters, she said. And so, over the months and eventually years of treatment, the only thing I ever did was to love her. This case illustrates a concept that we previously presented in the chapter on apathy. That is, a higher vibration, such as love, has a healing effect on a lower vibration, such as that in the patient's case of fear. This love is the mechanism of reassurance, and very often we can quiet another person's fears by our mere physical presence and by the loving energy that we project to them. With that, we surround them. It is not what we say, but the very fact of a presence that has the healing effect. I don't know how many of you are with me in the unified journey. In that book, do you remember every single night we're supposed to send out love? Now, the more love you give, the more love you get. You, as a one person, are sending love. Imagine the millions of people doing the same thing, and you're also recipient of that love. Love heals at all categories. Be it fear, be it judgment, everything is healed if you start loving unconditionally. And it's very easy to send love to people you don't know. Just keep sending love. Ek din aayega that you'll really feel love. So let's understand further. We can learn another one of the laws of consciousness. Fear is healed by love. Fear is healed by love. This is a central theme of the series of books by psychiatrist Jerry Jimbowski. Love is letting go of fear. This was also the basis of the healing that went on to the Attitudinal Healing Center in Manhasset, Long Island, of which I was co-founder and medical advisor. Attitudinal healing has to do with group interaction with patients who have fatal and catastrophic illnesses. And the whole process of healing has to do with the letting go of fear and replacing it with love. This is the same mechanism of healing demonstrated by the great saints and illumined healers, whose very presence has a power to heal because of the intense vibration of love with which they vibrate, which they radiate. This healing power, the base of spiritual healing, is also transmitted by loving thoughts. The multitudes of people down through recorded history who have healed by just this kind of love are legendary. In recent history, for instance, Mother Teresa is credited with healing a great number of people by these very mechanisms of unconditional love and illumined presence. To people who are unfamiliar with the laws of consciousness, these types of cures seem miraculous. But to those who are familiar with the laws of consciousness, such phenomena are commonplace and to be expected. High levels of consciousness are in themselves capable of healing, transforming, and enlightening others. The value of the surrendering mechanism is that by letting go of the blocks to love, our capacity to love increases progressively. And our loving energy has the capacity to heal ourselves as well as others. The only the only drawback to these types of healings is that often the healing is sustained while in proximity to a person capable of radiating high levels of love. But the illness returns when people leave that presence, unless they themselves have learned to elevate their own consciousness. Do you see what are we conscious of? If we are subconsciously aware of the fact that we are all to be channels of love and light and all the time radiating love, people around us and within us will heal. But the minute we go off track of these, we lose our consciousness, we lose our awareness, and we get sucked into a world. Well, you might ask, if sending loving thoughts has a healing power, how come we see all the sick people in hospitals whose families are so solitary? Why does the love of the family not heal the patient? The answer is to look at the kind of thoughts that are being sent by the family to the patient. As you examine them, you will find that they are primarily thoughts of anguish and fear. accompanied by guilt and ambivalence. We might picture love to be like the sunlight and negative thoughts like the clouds, whereas a higher, greater self is like the sun. All the negative thoughts, doubts, fears, anger, resentments that we hold dim the light of the sun, and finally the light comes through only weakly. It was Jesus Christ who said that we all, with faith, potentially have the power to heal. The saint or person of higher consciousness is by definition one who has removed the clouds of negativity and radiates the full healing power of the sun. That is also why saintly beings have such magnetic power that they attract multitudes to their physical presence. As an example, with the late Indian saint Sri Ramana Maharishi had a birthday, 25,000 people stood in the sweltering tropical sun shoulder to shoulder in one solid mass to celebrate his presence and wish him well. As we consistently let go of resisting our fears and allow them to be surrendered, the energy that was tied up in the fear is relinquished and now becomes available to shine forth as the energy of love. Therefore, unconditional love has the greatest power of all. And that love is the power of celebrated saints. Unconditional love is also the power of the mother and of the father, the presence of whom is so essential to children's learning to love as they grow. It was Sigmund Freud who observed that the most fortunate thing that can happen to us growing up is to be our mother's favorite child. What about those of us who have not had the fortunate experience of being bathed in unconditional love as we grew up? So please reflect back and say, like, I can very easily say I was one of the favorite child, very easily. The others may say whatever, that they were more favorite. I know I was. Now, even if you aren't, let's understand. Firstly, we are all super, super, super blessed. Now, what is the common belief that you're holding on to? There is this common held belief that if we do not have this experience, then we are somewhat scarred, crippled for life. Actually, it's not so. A person who has experienced a great deal of fear of love in early, sorry, a person who's experienced a great deal of love in early life has fewer fears and a head start. But this love is intrinsic within all of us. By the very nature of our being and by the very nature of the life energy that flows through us and empowers us to breathe and to think, we all have had some vibrational energy level of love within us. If in looking at ourselves, we see that we have allowed the experience of our own nature to become blocked off by extensive fears, then we can rediscover the love within us by utilizing the mechanism of surrender and thus letting go of the clouds of negativity. So, all of us are in a world of negativity, whether we realize or whether we don't. But when we are in a world of negativity, we have to ask ourselves a question. What is it that, which fear is it that is making me feel so negative? Why am I being negative? What is this fear doing for me? Is it helping me at all? Worst to worst, kya ho jayega? Now, once we ask these questions and we become a questionative person and seeker, we may rediscover this inner love and we may rediscover the true source of happiness. That is my mind who's playing games. Boss, itna kuch hai nahi. मैंने exaggerate किया हुआ है. And agar hai bhi to we'll take it by the horn, yeah, we'll take it by the bull. How does it matter? Now, very important for us to understand that we are in a journey of overcoming fear. Now, for overcoming fears, we have to own the shadow. Now, what is shadow? One of the blocks to emotional development is a fear of what lies buried in the unconscious. हमारे unconscious mind में, subconscious mind में क्या है, we don't know, right? We all have heard, lived a life with the fact that we all are emotional beings. Okay, great, fantastic, we all are emotional beings. अब हमारे अंदर क्या है हमें पता ही नहीं. Now, Carl Jung called this area which we are unwilling to look at and to own is called the shadow. He said the self cannot become healed and whole unless we look at and acknowledge the shadow, which means हम अपने आप को accept करें in all the shades of gray, the brightest to the darkest. None of us are perfect. We've heard that, right? And none of us are worst. None of us are, we all have our shades. Acceptance that, I am who I am the way I am. This means that buried within us all in that junk called the collective unconscious is everything that we most dislike admitting about ourselves. The average human, he said, would much rather project his shadow into the world and condemn it and see it as evil, thinking that his problem is to battle with evil in the world. In actuality, the problem is merely to acknowledge the presence of such thoughts and impulses in ourselves. By acknowledging them, they become quiet. Once they're quiet, they no longer unconsciously run us. अगर हमारे अंदर fear है, उसको हमें accept करना चाहिए. Okay, yes, I have this fear. Okay, why do I have this fear? It's okay that I have this fear. क्यों है? जब हम acknowledge करते हैं, हम उसको बढ़ावा नहीं देते. एंड वो फियर ज्यादा बढ़ चढ़ के नहीं आएगा बिकॉज आपने उसको ओन कर लिया, एक्नॉलेज कर दिया, आपने उसको कंप्लीटली इग्नोर नहीं किया. कंप्लीटली इग्नोर करने में बच्चे को देखा है, जब आप कंप्लीटली इग्नोर कर देते तो दो चीजें होती हैं. एक बार तो उस बच्चा और रोएगा धोएगा और टैंट्रम्स क्रिएट करेगा, अटेंशन मिलेगा. और एक बार वो बच्चा एकदम रेक्लूज हो जाएगा एंड ही और शी विल विदर अवे एंड जस्ट फील सो इग्नोर्ड एंड विल बी जस्ट प्रोटेक्टेड एज अ, दिखेगा भी नहीं आपको घर में. फियर को दोनों तरीके से हैंडल करना है. डेलिकेट है, but in this chapter we'll all understand how to handle it. Anyway, let's talk about it. In looking at our fears of the unknown, which are really fears of what is in the depths of the unconscious, it is useful to have a sense of humor. Once looked at and acknowledged, the shadow no longer has any power. In fact, it is only our fear of these thoughts and impulses that give them any power. Once we become acquainted with our shadow, we no longer have to project our fears upon the world, and they begin to evaporate rapidly. So, did you understand? Once we have gotten ourselves acquainted with our fear, it's powerless, and then it can't be projected, and then our life is so much more simpler. Now, what makes the endless television programs, which are concerned with mayhem and its various forms, so attractive? It is because what is being acted out on the screen, where it is safe, and all the forbidden unconscious fantasies in our own psyche. Once we're willing to look at the same movies on the TV screen of our minds and see whence they really originate, the attraction of such entertainment disappears. People who have acknowledged the content of their own shadow have no interest in crime, violence, and fearful disasters. I don't know if you have observed, whatever you see on movies is playing on your subconscious mind. There are some people who see crime patrols and there's, such kind of serials, and they will have far more cases, and they will be always fearful. You can't trust. They'll have mistrusting. Like yesterday, I saw this beautiful movie once again, Christmas Chronicles. The entire night I was dreaming of Santa Claus and the gifts and running around, going in the clouds. They play on our psyche whether we realize or not. आपने क्या कॉन्वर्सेशन करी है कल, लास्ट के 3 4 5 hours वाइनिंग आवर्स में क्या किया है, it plays on your subconscious mind. If you truly want to become a person who's independent of fear, I request once again to all my Sangha Mitras, please record your affirmations, your manifestation in an affirmative way and listen to that before you sleep. So that you are going to be reprogramming your mind and getting away from this world of fear. Now, the biggest block, let's understand that. One of the blocks to become acquainted with the fear in one's own mind is a fear of the opinions of others. My guru Nitya says, सबसे बड़ा रोग क्या कहेंगे लोग. ये fear जो होता है ना, कि लोग क्या कहेंगे, सोसाइटी क्या बोलेगी, उनका ओपिनियन क्या होगा. That is the problem. We are wanting validation. The wanting of their approval goes on inside of our mind in a constant fantasy. We identify with the opinions of others, including authority figures, and coalesce these in such a way that we hear it out as our own opinion of ourselves. In looking at fears, then, it is well to remember that Carl Jung saw the reservoir of the forbidden inside the shadow as a part of the collective unconsciousness. The term collective unconsciousness means that everybody has these thoughts and fantasies. There's nothing unique about any one of them when it comes to the way we symbolize our emotions. Everybody secretly harbors a fear that they are dumb, ugly, unlovable, and a failure. The unconscious mind is not polite, it thinks in gross concepts. When it thinks of the phrase murder the bum, the unconscious literally means that. Look deep within yourself the next time somebody cuts you off in traffic and picture what you should really do to that person if you were strictly honest with yourself and did not censor the image coming to mind. You'd like to push them off the road, wouldn't you? Pulverize them, push them off the cliff. Isn't that right? That's the way the unconscious thinks. It just reacts, it doesn't respond. That's immediate reaction. The reason that a sense of humor is useful is because these images are comical. And once we look at them, there is nothing awful about it. It is just the way the unconscious handles images. It doesn't mean that you're a rotten person, that you're potentially a criminal. It just means that you have gotten honest and faced how the human animal mind operates in its dimension. There is no point in getting melodramatic, self-critical, or tragic about it. The unconscious is crude and uncivilized. While your intellect went to prep school, your unconscious remained in the jungle where it is still swinging in the trees. Looking at the shadow lines is not a time to get prissy or squirmish. It's not a time to make it literally either. Because symbols of time, symbols of the unconscious are just that. They're symbols and they're primitive in nature. If worked with consciously, they can empower us rather than inhibit us. It takes a lot of energy to keep the shadow buried and to suppress a multitude of fears. The result is energy depletion. On the emotional level, it is expressed as an inhibition of the capacity to love. So, very important today, we'll conclude at this point. We please have to understand one thing. All of us are in an energy world. All of us have shadow buried in us. All of us have suppressed that, repressed it, and we have lost our energy. Now, in our emotional level, if we start saying that I am capable of love and I'm willing to love and I am love and I give love and I get love, you are going to really work on your fears by trusting yourself. And if you start saying this again, I trust the process of life, I trust people around me, your conscious mind will process this information consciously to the subconscious mind, which is so primitive in nature. That mind is saying, oh, fear, fear, fear. And if you rewrite the program of this particular chapter in that, you're only going to get in a world of much more comfort rather than fear. So tomorrow we'll take it from here in the world of consciousness. Tomorrow we'll start from here. And today we'll move on to the next book. This chapter is such an important chapter simply because fear is what is ruling all of us. You and I am products of fear. We are all human beings, and humans were trained to be fearful. That's a basic animal instinct to save ourselves from the person who's going to come and attack us. That's how we grew up. So the only thing to counteract fear is how we acknowledge our fear. For example, if I'm having some tension in my body and I realize that, okay, I have a fear. What am I fearing? Ask yourself, what am I fearing? The answer will come up with your own mind. Okay, you're fearing this, that failure will come in, or your father will scold you, or your mother will do this, or your wife will do this, your husband will do this, whatever. And then you say, okay, fine, if this happens, what worst will happen? I acknowledge you that you are there in my body, but what is it? And then you start asking yourself, introspecting yourself with the questions. That's what your life will change when you will. And please experiment this today. Today and tomorrow is all about fear. Please experiment today, everyone, one experiment. Please see when you get become fearful about something. And when you address that fear, when you acknowledge that fear and you ask the fear, are you serving me any purpose? What is it that I'm feeling? Automatically, that feeling of controlling will become let go. And this is how we're going to train our body. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, so today we're going to be reading about this chapter which says stop missing opportunities. How many opportunities have you missed? I have lost count of the number of people I know who have been one and didn't take it. They were bliss. They assumed another would come along. Then harder and harder. Can someone please read?
Yeah. They assumed another would come along, and then another and another, but it didn't. They had one chance and they let pass by. In retrospect, they bitterly regret it. Opportunities are often rare and fleeting. The great Hollywood actor, director, and producer Warren Beatty was nominated for 15 Academy Awards during his career and once won the Best Director award. His most famous acting role was as Clyde Barrow in Bonnie and Clyde. In 1964, he wanted to put the film together he was starring. His idea became What's New, Pussycat? It was a comedy about a notorious womanizer who wanted to be faithful to his girlfriend, but was continually tempted by women who kept falling in love with him. Betty found a producer and they set the work on the script. They soon realized they needed someone to write good stuff about the movie, to write good about in a humorous fashion, to write good jokes. And at a club in New York called The Bitter End, they saw a young comic called Woody Allen doing stand up. He was funny, so they offered him $30,000 a week to add a few jokes to script. Allen tried to get $40,000 a week. No was the response. Allen said he'd do it for $30,000 if he also can have a small cameo role. They agreed. Allen went to work. As draft followed draft, Betty noticed that his role was getting slighter as the unknown Allen's got bigger. Allen continued to expand his character as Betty's shrank smaller and smaller. Eventually, Betty angrily stormed away from the project. What's New, Pussycat went on to be a big success. From that moment on, Allen was a significant Hollywood A-lister and made sure he was always in total control of his work. He made the most of his opportunity. He might never have gotten another one. It was a great opportunity, but he made it big. He went on greater and greater film projects. I have known many, many artists who were offered a one-person exhibition, a big chance, but argued with the gallery owner about some small contractual detail and the deal fell through. They were never offered another exhibition. I've known writers who want a slightly bigger royalty than the publisher was offering. They rejected it, but it turned out to be the only book deal they were ever offered. It was their big break. They assumed there would be more, but there weren't. They vanished into oblivion. If you're a nobody, it's not a good idea to be a difficult nobody. When you're somebody who can be a difficult somebody, even then it's probably not wise. When you're given a break, take it and make it count. Make it with a lot of leads. Even if you have no idea how you will make it work, say yes. Then work out how to bring it off. Rise to the occasion when the occasion arises. Very important to take back these last 4 or 5 lines. जब लाइफ में स्टार्ट ऑफ कर रहे होते हैं whatever is coming your way सर माथे पे take it up gracefully, don't be tough. It's a beginning, it's a break. People think अरे अभी शुरुआत में इतना नहीं होगा तो हम तो अपनी वैल्यू को शुरुआत तो करो. Very important to start. My first wedding card that I had done when I was 18 years old was free. But I was getting an opportunity to design for somebody, and I really worked hard in the press also for that card. It was free, but just see how it gave me a break in life. So it's very important to start. Don't reject the startups. Don't reject that it's too small. Nothing is too small. Make it count. Just keep increasing it. Benjamin Disraeli says, one secret of success in life is for a man to be ready for his opportunity when it comes. So the only thing we should realize about us is that our secret lies in us. If you want to succeed, whatever opportunity comes, just say yes. People who say no can never go further in their life. There are people who say, oh, I don't have time. And there are people who go back on their words also. Life will never be nice to them. They join something by saying, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then they say, no, I can't do it. Because they think that they're indispensable. Let me tell everyone, nobody is indispensable. एक जाएगा, दो आएंगे, दो जाएंगे, चार आएंगे. That's the way it goes. Some staff acts pricey and we just say, you chuck out one staff and new staff will come in. Staff has no dearth of bosses. Bosses have no dearth of staff. People are there available all the time. Karma matters. Your courage matters. Very, very important for us to keep taking opportunities and be giving our 100%. One thing is when we take up some jogs, give it your 100%. Don't give it lightly. Ki, aaj nahi, kal nahi, parso. When people do this, na, life also does this. Aaj nahi, tumhari turn, kal nahi, acha parso. Because it will not give you an opportunity. Please take opportunities whenever they come in life. That's the secret of life, and enjoy it. All right, time to move on to our hard thought. Anybody has any questions about today's chapter, please feel free to ask, because we are in this very beautiful journey of realizing about fear. And I'm glad that Akshay asked a question and I think he got his answer. But everyone today, observe yourselves. Din mein kitni baar fear aata? And if you want, you write it down. So, you are accepting that, okay, there is fear that I have. And this is what I did. And I asked and I answered. In fact, tomorrow, if possible, give reflections. How did you feel about it? All right. Anybody wants to read? Please raise your hand if yes. Responsibility and blame game. Yes, Akshay. Please unmute yourself. So today is about responsibility and blame. We've talked about this many times and we'll again keep talking about it because this has to go as a reprogrammed formatting in our mind. It is very comfortable to play victim because always somebody else's fault. You have to stand on your own 2 feet and take up some responsibility. We've all understood this and we've understood that 10 million times that हमारी लाइफ में जो कुछ भी होता है हम रिस्पॉन्सिबल है उसके लिए. पर हमें बहुत मजा आता है बोलने में तुमने ऐसा नहीं किया ना तो मेरी लाइफ में ऐसा हो गया. And then we think, अरे we become the victims. No longer victims. I have the power to make changes. Yes, please. Yes, Akshay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
There is a difference between responsibility and blame. When we talk about responsibility, we are really talking about having power. When we talk about blame, we are talking about making wrong. Responsibility is a gift because it gives you the power to make changes. Unfortunately, some people choose to interpret it as guilt. These people usually accept everything as a guilt trip in one way or another because it is another way to make themselves wrong. Being a victim is wonderful on one level because then everyone else is responsible and we don't get a chance to make changes. When people insist on feeling guilty, there is not much we can do about it. They either accept the information or they don't. Just leave them alone. We are not responsible for their feeling guilty.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much. So anything particular you want to do in your meditation or should we do a generic one? Let me know. And I'm so glad, Richa, that you keep saying that you're a fearless soul. How wonderful. So I'll tell you one more thing, Richa. The soul is always fearless. So soul is love and light. You can always say that I am a fearless person because soul will always be fearless. The person, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, that has fear. Letting go of what you can start saying is that I am fearless. I am fearless. That's enough. I is soul, but my soul has chosen this avatar in my life. So yes, that is what it's important. So, all right. Let's good health for all. Yes, please. All right, everyone. Eyes closed. Please ground yourselves. Check your postures. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Life is beautiful. Life is magical. Life is full of superpower. I am fearless. I have learned to see my fear at a close proximity. By now, I have learned to stop judging myself whenever I fear, because I've realized that as a human being, I am programmed to be fearful. But consciously, I can reprogram myself and be fearless. because ultimately I have the power to make the changes. I no longer play the blame game. I no longer make myself the victim and consider other people as faulty. Finally, I'm learning to stand on my feet and take responsibility for my life, my actions, my deeds. And whether I know or not, I still need to understand that whatever happens in my life happens for a reason. And I am the person who's a writer, producer, director of this movie of my life. And whatever is happening is as per my command. Now, this command could be conscious or subconscious, but truly it is me who's writing. It's me who's adding a dis-ease in my body. It's me who's adding a uncomfortable situation in my body. It's me who's attracting ignorance or some kind of a abuse from someone because I need to learn some lesson. Now, the minute I inquire within myself, what is it that I've learned? Or what blessing do I see in this gray area? I can always see the silver lining. I am now more responsible as I know it is a rare, precious gift. When I become responsible, I fear a bit less. I fear a bit less because I now understand that I have an inherent nature to fear. But all I have to do is retune within myself and ask, what is it that I fear? First, I should ask myself a question. Do I fear something? And then be waiting to see the download of the number of fears I hold. Once I accept a fear, I ask the fear, why are you still fearing? What are you fearing? And then I simply think of the worst. What worst can happen? And then just accept that and see the power of fear diminishing slowly, steadily, but gradually into nothingness. By now, I realized that the more thought I give to fear, I become more fearful. But when I ask my fear, why are you there? The dimension and the equation changes. Now I don't feel guilty anymore, but I believe that even guilt is a negative expression. Now I'm more hopeful, more courageous to start my life, to live my life in a very beautiful fashion. Let's accept the information. Let's accept the reprocessing of our minds. Let's accept that we are here for a reason. And we are responsible for good and bad, but we are not guilty about it because this is how life has to flow. And each one of us trusts the process of life. And so it is. Let's bow our heads in gratitude towards Mother Earth. Extend our big thanks to her for empowering her, enlightening us, and to nourishing us with all the beautiful virtues, especially of love, life, humility, resonance, being grounded, and always being understanding with compassion and empathy. Let's look at the eye level and thank the wonderful life lessons. Good or bad, each one was a wonder. Each one a product of our manifestation, known or unknown. We realize that fear or had also manifested. Simple examples of fear are if we thought that we'll be unhealthy, it comes on to us. If we thought we'll have less age, it comes on to us. If we thought, what if this happens and that happens? Because fear expands. So now at the juncture today, I'm happy that I have let go, or consciously I'm letting go of fear by tuning in it, by going deeper and understanding. For tomorrow, well, I'm hopeful that you will be a fearless person. You will live life with absolute new power knowing that you can create life the way you desire. Thank you, life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's expand our hands towards the universe above. Dear universe, thank you for having our backs. Dear cosmos, thank you for including us in the Leela. Dear angels, thank you for guiding us. Dear guardians, thank you for guarding us, protecting us. Dear divinities, thank you for blessing us, showering us with choices of blessings in form of teachings, learnings, and so much more beautiful enlightenment. And to all the teachers in this realm or the others, to all the gurus in this plane or the others, in this world or another, in this universe or in others, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming in our life. Let's fold our hands in gratitude for everything from heavens to earth. Rub them together. Bless your face, your neck, the backside of your body up to down. Bless your soles. Bless your legs down to up. Bless your gut area. Bless your lungs, your heart. Keep your hands on your heart and feel the love there. The love for your loved ones, the love for the life that you live. And now, with the love that you feel for your loved ones, spread the love from your heart to all the people you don't even know. Spread it. Become the channel of sending love in all directions. Let there be love, let there be light in the world around us. Love, light, and blessings. Kamakshi, Manish, Shivani, Ruchi, Manisha, Vijayji, Bhavika, Surendraji, Akshay, Richa, Nikita, Ushaji, Amit, Arvindji, Shami, Neha, Peenaji, Ritu, Hitendraji, Reema, Rahul sir, Amrita ma'am, and to everyone doing this session virtually. Lots of love and light to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, any reflections about fear? All I can say is that if we are just going to tune into ourselves and see that what are we fearful for, we'd be becoming practitioners of tuning into our fears. We'll be becoming less controllers. We'll be becoming people who are living life beautifully and not with fears. People who want to create that thinking मेरी धाक है या मैं control करता हूँ are never loved. They will be respected for their age, for their order, for what the financial standing is, but never loved. The love will be adulterated, not unadulterated. So to become an unconditional love receiver, you have to unconditionally give love. And you have to let go. You have lived how many ever years you have with that particular pressure of ruling with fear. Now let go. Start practicing this every day. There will come a point in time that you will actually become channels of healing yourselves. Yes, Kamaksh, you can unmute yourself. Yes, please.
Good morning, Prachi.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, today's meditation was very powerful, and this fear factor, it came yesterday also, because since this past 20 days, we've lost 4 of our doctors, and the 2 were technical staff and 2 were doctors. And the reason is like one of them was doing his OPD, and he just collapsed on the table, and the patient told he went in 2 minutes. Other technician, he was having his food at night, and at 10 after eating the food, he had cardiac arrest. So this fear is so subtle, because everybody's saying maybe it's an effect of a vaccine, or that the atmosphere was very bad yesterday in our operating theater. And just I told them to do the meditation, and in that, for a few minutes, when we induced the patient and we took the meditation, we felt much better. But today also we are planning to do it, because the things are happening like this only. Person takes a tea, morning tea, and he's no more. So अजीब सा fear था.
अब expand कर रहे हो thought को. 1 हुआ, 2 हुआ, 3 हुआ, 4 हुआ. आप expand कर रहे हो. Without
क्या
knowing,
करूं?
you and everyone around you are expanding the thought. Simply
Okay.
start saying Om Sat Gati. This was their Gati, and this is moving on further. And don't expand it. All
Okay.
of you unknowingly are counting the number of losses. I know it's natural, but just say they're chosen this time to leave because the year is ending. They started a new life. It's okay.
Mhm.
And wish them well. Don't count why they lost their life. Just see how smoothly they left. 2 minutes they went. How beautiful. No suffering.
Mhm.
And life may, I don't know, I mean, sorry to say, I don't know what fear we have. आए तो जाएंगे भी ना. और fear
Mhm.
रखेंगे तो ये तो नहीं कि हम लंबी लाइफ बना लेंगे अपनी. जब fearless हो जाएंगे लाइफ अपने आप लंबी हो जाएगी. That is a guarantee.
ओके, तो उस माहौल को कैसे ठीक करना चाहिए? मतलब शुड आई, मतलब हाउ टू
We
गेट आउट
have
ऑफ दिस?
chants on ना. हॉस्पिटल में अलाउड होगा ना chants on करना. सब calming chants नहीं भी करना तो calming music. इतने सारे music pieces हैं online. Water flowing or something. अच्छा है. Have those vibrations on. They are calming by the nature. Patients को भी काम करेगी. आप लोग को भी काम करेगी. Background pipe music कर लो ना of your relaxing music.
राइट.
You have to bring the energies. वो दिमाग में जो क्लटर चलता रहता है उसमें बार बार वो वो पानी का बहना, वो चिड़ियों का जब करना will be helping you and everyone. Work on that. आज करके देखिए. You are the owner of the hospital. No, you're working for the hospital.
Yeah, I'm working with the
But
hospital.
you're working on a senior point. You can always tell the management now that this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will not say anything against it.
Hmm.
Try to correct and go with the conviction that they will listen to you and it will become a culture henceforth. Imagine hospital में बहुत tough day करके भी आओ, घर आके relaxed हो because you've been hearing meditation music all along.
Yeah. हाँ,
Mother
वो
Nature
मतलब it
heals
helps.
ना. तो
It
अगर
helps.
Mother Nature का music आप play करेंगे अपने hospital में, you'll be healing. मैं तो खुद के ऑफिस के चेंबर में मेरे जहां मेरा एमडीओ बैठता है, this music is forever on. Even when I'm not there. Yeah.
Thank you. And one more thing, yesterday realization हुई कि I was teaching my residents about drug reactions, and then I just remembered that even in medicine we don't want any medicine to react.
Right.
Just want the medicine to respond.
Correct.
So I got remembered that yes, even in human life we don't want any reactions. We want
Absolutely.
response.
So wonderful. Thank you for taking these learnings and teachings deeper in your life. Thank you, Dr. Kamakshi.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
Manish, please unmute yourself. Yes, Manish, bole.
If we ask the question, what worst can happen, and that worst makes us more fearful, then how to tackle it?
नहीं, आप मुझे एग्जाम्पल बताएं. जनरली बात करने में मजा आएगा, but let's take talk about example. Answer can never make you more scared. बताइए.
Suppose someone is suffering from a disease and the worst is death.
Yeah. So why can't we safeguard things around us before we leave?
That will make us more fearful.
No.
The thought of death.
No. Only if attached to my baby, my bacha, my husband, my parents. But if you say I've safeguarded them, if something happens to me, it's okay. Today, I'm genuinely saying if something happens to me today, I'm not scared about it. The show will keep running on, and I've seen death closely. You have seen death closely, Manish. You've lost your siblings and your parents. Has life changed? I mean, it changes, but it's continued, right? So is death really so bad? हम लोग project करते हैं, the death is bad. Is it bad? Somebody's come, they will go. There will be reasons for them to go. Natural death, it could be disease ke baad death, it could be, anything. It could be accidental death. But is it actually bad? It's liberation of the soul. Deep jaake dekho to death is like related to a पिंजरा में एक bird. अभी हम वैसे हैं इंसानों के रूप में. एक body में कैद हैं. Soul level पे देखो तो you're free when you have no body. So that is why we say Om Sadgadi. I never say rest in peace because we don't have to rest, right? I mean, I always say that you rise in peace in a way. Because you're supposed to see the gati of the soul, right? So it's not bad. Agar deep down dive karoge apne andar, you will realize death is not bad at all. It's a perception. एंड इस स्पिरिचुअल जर्नी में वही तो परसेप्शन हम ब्रेक कर रहे हैं. हमें अटैचमेंट बहुत ज्यादा है, तभी तो फेयर होता है. मेरा बच्चा मेरे बिना कैसे, क्यों नहीं होगा? कितने बच्चों की शादी होती है विद पेरेंट्स? इट्स नॉट लाइक नहीं होती. कितने बच्चों की शादी होती है विद वन पेरेंट? सो व्हाट? आई शुड मेक माई जर्नी काउंट द टाइम आई एम विद देम. अभी मैं बिजी हूँ काम करने में, बच्चे बोले टाइम नहीं है पापा मम्मा के पास, व्हाट्स द पॉइंट? Every day my day should be worthwhile. I have been there for my family. And that is something to be feared of if you're not doing it. अगर आप अपने अपने ह्यूमन गोल्स पे इतने लगे हुए हो एंड अभी टाइम नहीं दे रहे हो फॉर योर फैमिली, नाउ दैट इज समथिंग टू बी फियर्ड अबाउट. कि मैं प्रेजेंट पे ही नहीं हूँ, मैं आगे फ्यूचर के लिए काम कर रहा हूँ. एंड दैट्स व्हाट मेनी फादर्स हैव रिग्रेट, कि हमने तो अपने बच्चों को बड़ा होता देखा ही नहीं, हम तो थे ही नहीं, हम तो बिजी थे अपनी लाइफ बनाने में. अगर वो है तो वर्क ऑन दैट. I want all of us to shatter our typical inbox thinking. That's it. क्योंकि हम एक स्टक तरीके से सोचते हैं जो सोसाइटी ने सिखाया है हमें, उसको हमें ब्रेक करना है. We have to let go of all our preconditioning thoughts. Because life is beautiful. However long we're living it, firstly, I strongly believe we live the number of years we want to live. अगर हमारी कंडीशनिंग बोल रही है कि मुझे इस लाइफ से मिल चुका है जो मिलना था, मुझे अभी आगे कुछ नहीं मिलेगा, मैं बीमारी मैनिफेस्ट कर लूंगी, कोई प्रॉब्लम एक्सीडेंट मैनिफेस्ट कर लूंगी, आई विल गो. एंड अगर मुझे लगता है कि अरे बीमारी भी आई कुछ सिखाने के लिए मुझे, आई तो कांट डाई ओनली यार. जब मुझे कैंसर हुआ था, लोगों ने कहा था इतनी यंग है, इतना एडवांस है, ऐसा है वैसा है. आई सेड आई विल नॉट अंडरगो द सिजर्स कम व्हाट मे, मैं कैंसर छुट्टी कर दूंगी. these were my words. एंड वही किया मैंने. आई बिलीव ना कि अब तो हम जस्ट 30 है, अभी क्या होने वाला है. My younger one is 1 year old. अभी क्या होने वाला है? So it's about a perception. We have to change a perception. And only we can change, Manish. Nobody can come and change for us. And जितने हम questions करेंगे ना अपने आप से, उतने हम let go करेंगे. So go deeper. Ask yourself questions. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lots of love to everyone. Let's see each other tomorrow morning at 5. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.